Mm-hmm. Got it.
This is your drink, I think.
Yes, thanks.
Give a warm welcome for Mikhail.
Thanks. Mm-hmm. Fine. Hello, everyone. Today I wanted to do a lightning talk about web components and VueJS and relation between them and developer experience and some technical details about those two topics. So a little bit about myself, starting with this. My name is Mikhail. I'm originally from Moscow. Now I'm working for ING. Passionate about web development for last decade, I would say. Let's get more to the topic. About a year ago, I was doing a presentation on the meetup organized by those beautiful guys. And it was called Vue for Angular Developers. And basically at that moment, I would say maybe 1/3 of a room or less raised their hands, like when I asked, do you know what the Vue is? So most of my presentation was about, Vue is a new framework, but it's going to stay for longer than your typical framework, which rises every two weeks, right? And it has a lot of cool features. It has community support and everything. So almost a year passed, and we are now at the VueJS meetup. And in 2 months, we're going to have the conference. Meanwhile, the framework itself got, I think, twice more stars on GitHub. A lot of cool tooling around it, a lot of cool plugins. So I think it's going really well, and I'm happy that we're here discussing the future of it. So basically, what I wanted to do today related to Vue and web components. So basically, go a little around what are web components, because it's a big topic today. What are the key elements of it, and then how it relates to VueJS developer experience and platform itself. Then highlight some maybe ups and downs, and what to expect in the future. Just for the summary, how many of you know what web components is? Please raise your hand. Okay, thanks. And the second question, it's not going to be a lot. Who of you use VueJS on your daily job, like 9 till 6? So it's almost the same amount of people, but they don't overlap a lot. Okay, anyway, So let's dive into all that. What is web components? You probably, if you didn't hear about it before, this term was coined by Microsoft like 20 years ago or so, about some composable stuff that you can plug into some enterprise platforms. It was really, really long ago, but the really fast development and at least the specification development and spreading of the developers' awareness about this started in 2011. And that's when the V3C committee started working on it, when people started thinking of how it may be implemented, what it may include, what it's going to be, and stuff like that. So it was 6 years ago, and so now we're getting closer to the point when it really hits the users' browsers more and more. So in a nutshell, it's as simple as this. You include some fancy component into your web page. Then you place it inside of your body tag, and then you use it depending on what is the content of this element. So it's think of it as like a data picker in Bootstrap, or I don't know, app tag in a Vue application or an Angular application, stuff like that. But the key feature is that it's all encapsulated inside of one custom element. It's called a tag. So for example here, if we try to go and click this link, it's probably the most fancy component to show how things work. So have this, oh, come on. This called emoji rain, and that's what you see, the emoji rain. It's a short demo, so you can have different types of elements and stuff like that. But let's get back to the story. Yeah. So this is a simplified version of it, but just a sec. I think I'm missing the presenter mode. Sorry. I'll need to start it all over again. I'm sorry. Go here. Wasn't really well tested, the whole setup, but without a presenter mode, I don't think it will be very detailed. Okay. Perfect. So that was, in short, explanation how you may use it. But if we go more to the practical side, how the browser support it and what it's going to be, we can take a look at the can I use, and you basically see it's not that super cool for now. Chrome is really ahead of every other browser with that, but the others are really not very good. But as you see in the title, it's without polyfills, and the polyfill is a really big thing for the web components nowadays, because they still need to add the functionality that is not fully implemented in the modern browsers. So if we then check the table from web components JS library, which basically polyfills most of the missing stuff, it's by using this one, you may have it working even in IE 11. I mean, we're all like IE 11, right? That's what we are working for, right? So if you just add it up to your business logic code, to your application, you just need to add extra maybe 25, 35 kilobytes for the polyfills, and just for an example of one of the big libraries that use web components, Polymer. So in totally like 50 kilobytes on top of your application logic, and you are good to go with this set of browsers, which probably should cover quite a good deal of the modern users base. So then let's see what are the implementers, what are the main players on the market nowadays. Polymer, I put it separately because basically it's another big thing by Google. It has a lot of course, smart guys behind it, a lot of user base and everything. It's going really well. Recently they announced version 3, which covers a lot of, addresses the issues that were previously doing really well. But besides of that, there are at least 5. I named 3 other, let's say, competing implementations made by open source, by communities, which also comply with the specification. Sorry, the specification, we'll get to that later. It's maybe a bit out of context, but we'll go through the specification later. Also, maybe you came across such things as Ionic or AMP project. There's basically those teams of those projects. They also recently, or not very recently, been employing some parts of the web component specification for their projects. Okay, now let's try to look a little bit at the code. So here, for example, I have here 3 component declarations. One is Polymer, another one Xtags, and here is finally VueJS. Yeah. So if you just look closely, you will see there's a lot of similar things. Each component is, well, I'm only talking now about the JavaScript part because the markup of HTML and CSS is, it's not that big of a difference, but this is maybe the most different part, one from each other. So as you can see, it's a lot of similar things. It's no surprise, of course, because they were all looking into the web component specification, which was evolving at that moment, but still you can see basically each representation has the name of the component, some initial data it's going to work with, the methods which are visible internally for the component when it starts up, some life cycle hooks, things like that. But basically, if you know Vue.js, and use it daily, then for you switching to Xtags or Polymer or any other web components based platform would not be such a hassle. It's not like going from Angular to React or I don't know, from PHP to Haskell. It's pretty similar, you see. Okay, finally, to what is actually the web component specification. It consists of 4 parts: the custom elements, shadow DOM specification, HTML imports, and HTML templates. So we'll try to go through all of them one by one and have a little bit of comparison how it's implemented, should be implemented in web components and what we have in Vue.js, so that we can see what is your workflow as a Vue developer and your workflow as a person who uses web components or one of the frameworks. How much is that different in case? So we'll start with the custom elements. That's probably the most well worked through part of it. So basically, it's about those custom tags that you've been seeing for years, I guess, already. And so on the right, I have the conventional implementation of custom element, where you can either declare it, just declare it, or you can also employ, add some methods on it and inner variables. And on the right, this is the picture from official it's a community or company-driven project, and there is much more uncertainty compared to the standardized things that are under the hood of web components thing. So another summary slide I would like to show. Basically, I would call it a divergence era. So when web components were not yet on stage, but the industry already was really asking a lot of things from front-end side of the development. Yeah, we needed more stuff to show, do it faster, do it in a different ways, in a different settings, stuff like that. At that moment, there was no solid basement how to do things. No, let's say, and that's why every single freelancer or a big company started inventing the wheel. So if you could use jQuery, or you could start building Angular like Google did, or later you could come up with React like Facebook did, because they thought, okay, it's a good way for us to get rid of a lot of bugs and systematize what we're doing. But still, there were all those different approaches to basically the same set of problems, the same set of patterns that needs to be solved. And what I think is going to happen now, coming year or two, that basically all of those separate approaches will diverge to more conventional, more predictable way of doing things. And the basement for it is actually the web components specification. As I said, it's a big deal. It took a while for the community to do it, but it can be a solid common basement for all the interested parties. So there will be hopefully less JavaScript fatigue, which we all have. Like every 2 weeks you have a new build tool or a packaging manager, or I don't know, the framework which does something super cool. I hope, of course, there always will be new things. That's how humanity develops, but there should be less of it, because we will have a good conventional tool for this. Just a short recap. Basically, what I wanted to summarize that by comparing some of the web components approaches with the current Vue setup, I could state that your experience as a developer and hopefully as a user as well is pretty similar to what people who will be using web components will have. So we are on a really safe side here. And second point is that, yeah, with expecting browsers to implement the specification further, and the framework team, the Vue framework core team, they also have this point in their backlog, like when the support becomes more mature, we want to create something like a Webpack bundler or something that will directly convert Vue component into web components format, and so there will be almost no difference for you. You're still writing your evergreen Vue components, but they are converted into correctly parsed web components types. And the last one is, yeah, that hopefully that diversity of frameworks where you have hundreds and hundreds of different approaches is going to an end, and there will be less of this, and there will be more mainstream approach, and of course some experimental path. That's normal. So some links which inspired me talking about that thing, and yeah, of course the whole presentation is here. Thank you for your attention, and I would be glad to hear questions from you guys.
Are there any questions?
Please.
You also have something like Polymer, and how does Vue web components compare to the Polymer stuff?
Well, web components is a specification. It's just white paper basically, and Polymer is the most widespread and most, let's say, popular for now implementation of it. While VueJS, as I tried to show in the beginning, that the API you're using as developer is pretty close to what is in a web component specification and in Polymer. So in that sense, you have quite similar developer experience. And on the other side of the scale is the user, the one who opens your web page, and basically here again the overhead. If you leave aside the overhead and those minor details about that. If you use one framework, you're gonna stick to that and have some time to learn another one. If you leave aside those things, I would say it's also quite not far from each other. That's why I was comparing them basically.
Let's say, for example, at ING, they're using Polymer a lot, and I noticed that the performance is really horrible. How is that with VueJS? Is it better?
Well, there was no chance to try Vue in ING. That's one thing. The second thing, ING, as any huge enterprise, is using a lot of stuff, and alongside with Polymer, there's all other frameworks that you name it. So, but you mean that the productivity was not very well on your mobile or on your?
Yeah, mobile is horrible.
You mean your mobile application or the web page when you open it on mobile? You mean.
Yeah.
But is it the one where you logged in or when you're just browsing the website? Because it's all different systems.
The new thing,
The new part.
That should be true. Like in my experience with Polymer, at least for the amount of time that I worked with it, is optimizing the components, like the tools around the Polymer ecosystem are not, I would say, crystallized yet. So minification and those sort of things are not perfect yet. The other problem that you have is like the only browser that correctly implements the web component specification is Chrome. So every other browser needs to use polyfills, and those have a huge overhead. And the other thing is, because of things like the Shadow DOM, Chrome plugins can actually mess with your application. So I myself am using Vimium a lot. I can work without it. In Polymer, it breaks because of the Shadow DOM. But those kind of things are possibilities why it doesn't perform as well.
would it also be the same with the Vue?
Vue doesn't use the standard. So Vue is like, if you come back to the essence, it's nearly the same as React, what it does.
Yeah, it's an abstraction layer on top of DOM APIs. Yeah.
Whenever we're talking about standards, I usually think of this brilliant XKCD comic where we have 12 standards and they're
14, yeah.
Of, whatever number. And then we obviously need to consolidate all those standards and we should create a new one. I sometimes have a feeling that that's what's being created here. That there's yet another thing that's being introduced. Sure, there's a difference that it's now in a browser. To me, that doesn't really mean it's any good. It's just that it's always there. What's your opinion on this, your take?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the good thing is that it is in a browser and it's will stay for a long time, and it will hopefully make our life a bit more in some kind of borders. Will be less experimenting of different frameworks. But I have to admit, that's I think how the humanity and especially the technical community, makes their living. We're always inventing something. That's the fun part, right? So there will be always something different. So very good.
No further questions? Thank you, Mikhail.
Hi there. My name is Gabor. I'm a senior front-end developer at a company called Green8 Group. And a couple of sprints ago, we had to start a new project, which is an administration user interface for handling the translation, because we are building many platforms. And these platforms are not all in Dutch. You can find it around the world. So we needed a nice user interface for this stuff. And I came from an Angular JS world, and in this company we are using jQuery, Hogan, and a bit obsolete stack. We want to change this in the future. And in this project, I wanted to pick up something what we can use in the upcoming platforms. So of course we have to come up with some criteria. What are we going to use? So many criteria, of course, but I collected the most important stuff. So as I mentioned, we have many existing platforms and existing solutions. So we wanted to use a technology what we can use without compiling the code. So just a single script tag in the head or something like that. This is also good to mention, is sometimes we have to work with other teams as well, so they have to understand what are we doing. One of the most important criteria is documentation and the community. I really like good documentation, and it's unfortunately it's rare in my opinion. But if I'm curious about something, I would like to go to documentation and I find my answer here. If it's not the case, then you need a good community who can help you. And these two things are really important when you want to pick up a solution. Also really important criteria to easy to learn. In our company, I'm the only one senior front-ender, and we have 3 juniors, including really juniors. So I don't want it to pick up something which is really fancy, but something super unique, and it takes weeks just before starting working on that. Another important stuff is how you start the project. So instead of working days on your Webpack file, I just wanted to come up with something really simple and just do the development instead of playing around with the configuration. So the selection process was, here the 3 final guys are Angular, React, and VueJS. And at this point, I want to, VueJS is a really good comparison site on the official page. You can take a look. You can find the Angular, React, Polymer, and all this kind of stuff. So I think it is a good idea to take a look there if you are curious. What are the differences between Vue and other frameworks or libraries out there? Okay, so because I came from AngularJS, as I mentioned, from version 1, my first idea was, okay, let's take a look into Angular 2 and above and what it can give us. So I find Angular is really heavy. If you want to use it just not as your main library, but next to some other one, then your application or your website is going to be really big. You have to include a lot of scripts, and this is not what I want. And the syntax of Angular is not easy for juniors. You might see in the template language of Angular full with some strange brackets there. So that makes sense, the binding stuff, but this is really difficult for the juniors, and it's something what I don't want. So in the end, the conclusion is in Angular 2 and above, the juniors have to learn many new things just before they can start working on something. The next idea was React, and that's not that heavy like Angular. But the problem is pretty much the same. So you have to imagine a situation where you have juniors mainly experienced with basic web stuff like HTML, SAS, jQuery, and ES5 context. And if they have to work something like that, what you can see on the screen, then it's not that easy for them, not that straightforward. And on the top of React, you have Redux, and again, that's something a bit complex for non-experienced developers. So I moved to VueJS, and what I found there is really promising. That's a really good documentation there, so you can find really good examples there, really good explanations there, and there's an official style guide as well, which is pretty cool. And why it is so cool is they are not just saying, hey, you should do things like this, but they also explain why you should do it that way. So that's really, really good. They have a really nice community. There's a nice forum. You can ask whatever you want, and they will answer pretty quickly. Also in Stack Overflow, of course. And starting a new project is pretty simple. You can do that, just include the script tag and you can use it. Or there's a really nice command line interface, official, and that's just one line of installation command, and you get everything what you want, basically. Linting, end-to-end testing, unit testing, all this kind of cool stuff. And it's pretty easy to learn. There's some screen from the official documentation. I think it's pretty straightforward. So a conditional rendering, an event handler, and just looping through something. It's something what you don't really have to explain. It is pretty straightforward. You take a look and you immediately know what it does. I think that's quite amazing. So we started to use VueJS just a couple of sprints ago. It's 1-2 months what I'm talking about in this project, and my experience so far is pretty cool. It's a really nice thing. It's for experienced developers is yeah, I can repeat myself. It's really straightforward. You can go pretty quickly, pretty easily with them, and also for juniors, they can work pretty quickly. They won't stuck in, hey, how this stuff should work. They can just do work, and having single file components is something pretty cool. So it's, if you don't familiar with the idea, it's just one file for one component. You have the template there, the scripts and the style as well. And if you're using the CLI and single file components, you can easily use Pug instead of HTML. You can set it up just an attribute, and you have to install with npm, and you have it. You can use TypeScript if you want. Again, just an npm install and an attribute. And basically, you can use whatever CSS preprocessor you want, like CSS, post CSS, whatever. Again, really easy to use and gives you a lot of freedom as well. As I mentioned, really good recommendations what you can find in the style guide. But besides this, it's still the entire approach is really flexible. You can use your own style. It is not, they don't force you to use one way like Angular does, in my experience. So that's super cool. And what I found also really useful in the daily job is tracking the data flow. Where do you get the data? So passing data from component to component. It is really easy to track. You don't lost in, hey, where is this data come from? You can just pass pretty easily from parent to child. Or if you have deeply nested components or some complicated case, you can use Vuex, or I don't know how to pronounce. I just asked some other guys in here, and no one knows how should we do that. But basically, it's state manager, similar to Flux, but not that complicated like Redux. Again, really straightforward. So after a few weeks of experience with Vue, I can say this is something pretty nice, and really easy to learn, easy to work with that in a daily job. So if you didn't do that, then you should give it a try. And yeah, so that's my experience with VueJS. That's all what I wanted to say to you. So thank you so much for your attention.
seen some hands that people, so I'm curious about your experience on it, if you want to tell us about it.
Well, I've only just started with Vue like 3 weeks ago, and before that, in a hobby project, I did React, and I felt that Vue is a lot more free, and that's why you get bad decisions. At work, we used two-way data binding, which is a very bad idea, but it's also that Vue they deleted two-way data binding, which is a good thing, but then they decided, put it back in. That's a horrible idea. Please use state manager for that. And also I found that React, some smart guy, they made container components and presentational components, which is a really good idea. I just haven't found a way to mimic that in Vue. So for now, I don't have a strong opinion on Vue just yet, but I would still, I'm sliding towards the way that React is slightly nicer. But I'm new, so who knows?
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned right at the beginning that you wanted to avoid compiling code. Can you elaborate on why? And it sounded like in the end that you ended up with something that you needed to compile, like a single file.
Yes. Yeah, so in this current project that we're working now with Vue, it's a project from scratch, and this is where we have the freedom to compile the code because this is an internal project. But as I mentioned, I wanted to carry this knowledge to the upcoming platforms, and we have to also maintain the existing platforms as well. And if we have to use, or we want to use VueJS, then for example, an existing platform, I cannot, or I don't want to build a compiler for that. I just want to include the script tag, and now I have the freedom to use VueJS just to come up with a new component, for example, or a new page. So this is the reason basically for existing platforms. But yeah, of course, on the upcoming platforms and then the current project, yeah, definitely, I think why not use ES6 if you can, and all this kind of amazing stuff.
Absolutely. Have you used Nuxt for by any means, or?
No.
Okay.
No, I have no experience with that.
Interested in their experiences.
I mean, the server-side written.
Yeah, Nuxt is like the starter boilerplate for for Vue.
Yeah. Well, I used it just to test another plugin which I was developing, so not that big of an experience.
And you compared React plus Redux together, which I think kind of makes it obviously too complex for
juniors. Yeah, definitely.
I'd say if you would compare it to React only and use set state at certain places, that would make it a whole lot less complex for juniors to cope with.
Yeah, that could be a reason. Well, the thing is, one of the juniors, he used to learn in some sort of online stuff, React and Redux, but he was completely lost in that.
I can imagine.
And another guy in the company, he also had the same experience. He was also a junior meteor guy, and he was also, yeah, React was okay for them, but Redux is where he completely lost.
Yeah.
And he took a look into Vuex, and he found it way more simpler, and it's still manages your state. So yeah, I think that's pretty much the point. Why make it something complex if you can do that simple?
Basically, if you just take Vuex and give it to a day-to-day jQuery developer who's totally mad at dependencies and state conflicts, that solves it's like a paradise to see something and memorize it.
Yeah.
It's very easy, and it's much less boilerplate than redundancy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any questions? I'm done.
Well, thank you, Gabor.
Thank you.